Hi, I'm Chuck Marunde, exclusive buyer's agent in sunny Sequim, Washington. And today, I've got a fantastic guest I want to interview. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Today's guest is someone I like to turn to when I want clear, intelligent, and unbiased insight into challenging real estate issues, especially the kind of insight that protects retirees who want to buy a home in a market like Sequim, Washington. Alden Ingram is a national real estate analyst with a very deep expertise in brokerage operations, real estate transactions, marketing, and even technologies that are shaping the industry. He brings a rare combination of what I call strategic thinking and consumer advocacy to everything he does. And what makes Alden especially valuable, and at least to my listeners who are retirees planning to buy their last home at Sequim, is that he approaches every topic with the buyer's best interest in mind, just like I do. Based on his extensive research working out of the Seattle area and the entire Northwest, including the Sequim market on the beautiful Olympic Peninsula, I wanted to interview Alden with the kinds of questions that retirees around the country have been asking a lot lately as they make the transition from a long, successful career to retiring. They're asking questions like, where is the best place to retire? Why retire in Sequim, Washington? Is the famous blue hole in Sequim real? What's the weather like in Sequim? What's it like living in Sequim? What's the cost of living in Sequim? How do I find my ideal retirement home in Sequim? Do I need a Sequim buyer's agent? What online websites should I use to find my home in Sequim? Should I use Zillow? How do I make an offer on a home? How much do I offer? What's the Sequim real estate market like? These questions are why I created a real estate blog with over 2,000 articles just for buyers. It's why I created a YouTube channel called Living in Sequim with hundreds of videos for buyers, and why I've written several real estate books about the Sequim real estate market. Apart from the books on Amazon, all these resources are free for buyers. In this video, I want to do a deep dive for buyers who are still in California, Texas, or any of the other 35 states I've sold homes to over the last couple of decades. And this deep dive is intended to give buyers a perspective they probably haven't gotten from any other Sequim realtor. Here's the issue. Many buyers are searching for their ideal home, the one at the top of the bell curve. And when they find it, after months of watching the Sequim listings, they want to make an offer. But the dilemma is, you know it, what price should they offer? Well, we're in a very unique market right now in Sequim, and some hungry buyers are offering well above the listed price when the listed price is at or below the true fair market value. But many listings are overpriced by the listing agents too. So how does a buyer know how to make a competitive offer? Wait until you hear the answers from someone who has done really an outstanding job articulating exactly what the biggest challenge is for retirees who want to buy a home in Sequim right now. Alden is not here to sugarcoat trends or even to promote hype. He has no personal stake in this subject because he doesn't earn his living selling homes. He's a researcher who collects data and figures out how to interpret it. He's here to talk honestly about the state of the Sequim real estate market and how to navigate this market. Alden, welcome to the show. I've been so looking forward to interviewing you.
Thank you, Chuck. It's a pleasure to join you.
Let's start with this, Alden. Sequim is a unique market, and we have a small inventory, and Sequim has an even smaller inventory of what most retirees consider the ideal home at the top of the bell curve, which is a single-level home with at least 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, 1,800 to 2,400 square feet, an open floor plan, and the kitchen is the centerpiece of their home. So the kitchen must be gorgeous, must be a big area with beautiful countertops, a big island, right? Plenty of cabinets, a pantry of some kind is good, and top-of-the-line appliances. The master bedroom is probably the second primary feature that must meet with a retiree's approval, and that means it must be large with a walk-in closet and a large private master bathroom with both a gorgeous roomy shower and a bath for soaking. The property itself is a peaceful and relatively quiet area with some measure of privacy, which often means half an acre or more. This is what 90% of all retirees moving to Sequim want. So that's why I call this the home at the top of the bell curve. This means when that ideal home appears in the MLS, it can sell quickly, even above the listed price. At the same time, hundreds of homes that are older and do not have the ideal floor plan or are in a less attractive location can sit on the market for years before selling after multiple price reductions. Explain this uniqueness, Alden, as though you're talking to retirees. Explain why writing an offer on a Sequim home at the top of the bell curve now requires an entirely new level of understanding and strategy.
Chuck, you've described the Sequim market dynamic perfectly, and it's something that truly sets this area apart, especially for buyers relocating from more conventional suburban or metropolitan markets. To begin with, Sequim is not a mass market housing environment. It's a boutique market, shaped by its geography, zoning limitations, and the fact that it serves a very specific demographic. Mostly retirees seeking a quiet, safe, scenic place to live out their golden years. The total number of available homes at any given time is already low, but once you apply the filters that matter most to retirees, single-level living, 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, mountain or water views, newer construction, quality finishes, low maintenance landscaping, and close proximity to services, the inventory shrinks to a fraction. This is what creates what you accurately referred to as the top of the bell curve. These ideal homes represent a very narrow slice of the market, and when one appears in the MLS, savvy buyers, especially those who've been watching for months, are ready to act immediately.
Yeah.
These homes can receive multiple offers and may even sell above the list price, not because the market is broadly hot, but because that particular property meets a set of very rare and high-demand criteria. On the other hand, there's a long tail of inventory consisting of older homes with dated floor plans, deferred maintenance, awkward layouts, or locations far from town or on steep slopes. While some of these homes may appeal to the right buyer with specific renovation plans or a tighter budget, many sit on the market for months or even years.
True.
These properties often go through multiple price reductions and still struggle to find traction. This leaves some out-of-town buyers puzzled, wondering why homes sit so long in a town where inventory seems tight. The answer lies in the mismatch between what's available and what buyers want. The demand isn't for a house in Sequim, it's for a very specific kind of house in Sequim. That means the market behaves in a dual fashion: competitive and fast-moving for high-quality, well-located homes, and stagnant or price-declining for homes that miss the mark. This is something many buyers from California, Arizona, or other parts of the country might not be used to. In larger markets, price tends to follow location and square footage more predictably. In Sequim, functionality and livability for retirees matter far more than total size or even cosmetic upgrades. Homes with poor floor plans, too many stairs, small kitchens, or tight hallways don't fare well, no matter how beautiful the views may be. For this reason, I strongly advise retirees planning a move to Sequim work with someone who understands what makes a property truly suitable for aging in place and who can distinguish between marketable features and superficial selling points.
Well
Buyers who
said,
wait for the
Alden.
right home and are ready to act decisively when it appears tend to do very well here. Those who settle for good enough out of frustration often regret it later.
Boy, I've seen that for sure. Listing agents seem to price homes all over the map here. One listing agent lists a home at true fair market value, while another realtor lists a home way over the apparent fair market value. And then there's the listing agent, 1 in 100, who lists a home that does sit at the top of the bell curve at a price far enough below fair market value that it immediately gains a lot of attention and gets an offer within a few days of showing up in the MLS. That offer is likely to be all cash and possibly includes a waiver of contingencies. Have I described that correctly, Alden? What do you think?
Not only have you described it correctly, Chuck, you've captured the essence of what makes Sequim's market so unique and at times so perplexing for incoming retirees. In most metro markets, pricing tends to follow more standardized patterns where prices are derived from comparative market analysis, competitive positioning, and recently sold data. Typically, this is what drives pricing decisions and has in more traditional times even in the Sequim area. In Sequim, however, because of the narrow demand curve and the retiree-driven buyer pool, pricing strategy becomes more psychological than statistical, and that's where things get interesting. We often see three kinds of pricing behavior among listing agents. First, the fair market listing agent. This is the professional who's done a thorough CMA, comparative market analysis, and priced the home based on comps, condition, location, and current demand. This listing is usually respected by other agents, gets solid attention, and may sell near asking if the home itself is desirable. Second, the wishful thinking agent. This is far more common than it should be. The listing is priced based on what the seller wants, what the seller needs, or sometimes what the agent promised to win the listing. These properties may sit for 18 months, especially if they're dated or poorly located. Unfortunately, many buyers get discouraged by seeing these homes first and mistakenly conclude that Sequim is overpriced across the board. Third, the strategic undercutter. This is the rare listing agent who recognizes that creating a feeding frenzy is often more effective than chasing an inflated asking price. They intentionally list a highly desirable property, often one that sits at the top of the bell curve, at a price that's just under perceived market value. The result? Massive attention, multiple showings, and typically an all-cash offer within days, often with contingencies waived to win the deal. These agents understand buyer psychology and market scarcity, and they know that the right price gets more than the high price. What many buyers from California or other large markets may not initially understand is that not all listings in Sequim are rationally priced. Some are inflated and will eventually go through repeated price reductions. Others are sleepers, overlooked gems due to poor marketing or lack of visibility. And then there's that rare unicorn, a perfectly priced ideal home that hits the market at just the right moment and disappears within 48 hours. This is why it's absolutely critical for retirees buying here to have an exclusive buyer's agent who monitors the market daily and knows how to identify a property that's both priced strategically and aligned with the buyer's needs. Without that insight, a retiree may end up either overpaying for a mediocre home or missing out on a once-in-a-decade opportunity.
Well, I couldn't have said it better, and you are so right about that. What I try to do as an exclusive buyer's agent is help my buyers work through the process of making an offer on a home in a rational and calculated manner. We may find the ideal home for them, but most retirees are not willing to grossly overpay for a home. They don't mind paying the fair market value, and sometimes a little more. But I'll tell you who the rational and normal retirees cannot compete with. They can't compete with someone who has a lot of cash and doesn't care if they pay $100,000 to $300,000 more than a home's true fair market value. This is a really rough market for retirees right now. How would you analyze this kind of scenario?
Chuck, what you've just outlined is one of the most sobering realities in many desirable relocation markets across the country, and it's especially pronounced in places like Sequim.
Boy, I sure see it too. A lot.
Your analysis is spot on. This isn't just a tight housing market, it's an unbalanced playing field. In years past, the market rewarded buyers who were prudent, financially disciplined, and who made offers based on real data. But in the current environment, particularly in lifestyle markets like Sequim, we're seeing a new kind of buyer emerge, one with deep liquidity, often from high-priced coastal cities, who is not price-sensitive in the traditional sense. These are typically cash buyers, often selling a $3 million home in California and buying in Escalation for $800,000, with a kind of casual indifference to what the home is actually worth. These buyers may waive inspections, contingencies, and appraisals, and they sometimes offer $100,000 to $300,000 above true market value just to secure the home that checks all their boxes. From their perspective, it's not about the value of the house, it's about winning the life they envision. They've been watching new listings in the multiple listing service for months, and some for years, as they planned their retirement. And when they see that ideal home at the top of the bell curve show up one morning on Zillow, Chuck, they know if they don't get this home, their idea of the perfect retirement home, they may not get another chance for a long time. That creates a difficult dynamic for rational, thoughtful retirees. Those who've worked hard their entire lives are now living on fixed or conservative income streams and simply want to make a sound financial decision. These buyers are calculated, cautious and principled, and they often feel blindsided or even demoralized when their carefully considered full-price offer is instantly outbid by someone throwing down a suitcase of cash. This is especially tough in markets like Sequim, where the number of ideal homes is extremely limited. As we discussed earlier, when one comes up, demand concentrates in a flash, and the buyer with emotional discipline can easily be outmaneuvered by one with financial firepower. So what can retirees do? First, have a clear ceiling. Know what you're willing to pay, and be prepared to walk away if the price exceeds what you consider rational. Emotional bidding is how retirees end up with buyer's remorse, or worse, financial instability. Second, move quickly when the right home appears. While you can't outbid a reckless buyer, you can outposition slower ones. A fast, clean, well-written offer, backed by strong earnest money and local expertise, still carries weight. Third, consider overlooked homes with renovation potential. If a property has the right location and bones, but is cosmetically dated, you may have more negotiating room and less competition. And fourth, lean on an agent who knows how to separate the noise from the signal, as you do, Chuck. Not all listings are what they appear, and not all bidding wars are what they seem. The right guidance can help retirees avoid traps and seize real opportunities. In short, this is a tough market, but not an impossible one. The key is to remain focused on value, not hype. Retirees who approach the process methodically, with someone advocating solely for their interests, can still succeed, even in a market shaped by overzealous cash buyers.
Yeah, I agree. And that's exactly the way that I think when I represent a buyer. Let's talk about how buyers are making their offers most competitive. What makes an offer leap over all the other offers? Is cash better than financing from a seller's perspective? And once a buyer has decided on a price they want to offer, would an escalation addendum be a good idea?
These are the exact kinds of strategic questions buyers need to be asking, especially in a market like Sequim, where the most desirable homes may attract multiple offers within hours of hitting the MLS. From a seller's point of view, the most attractive offer is typically the one that combines price, certainty, and simplicity. The winning offer isn't always the highest. It's the one that gives the seller confidence that the deal will actually close without friction. Here's what makes an offer rise to the top. Clean terms, meaning little to no contingencies. A buyer who waives inspection, appraisal, or financing contingencies is showing real commitment and strength. Strong, earnest money deposit. This shows financial seriousness and gives the seller comfort. Flexible closing timeline. Letting the seller choose the closing date can be more valuable than a few thousand extra dollars. Short contingency periods. Even if a buyer includes an inspection or appraisal clause, making that timeline tight tells the seller, we won't drag this out. A well-crafted personal letter, not always necessary, but when used tactfully, a sincere letter from the buyer can make an emotional difference, especially with sellers who have a strong attachment to the home. Now regarding cash versus financing, yes, cash is almost always more appealing to sellers. It eliminates the risk of loan denial, avoids appraisals entirely, and typically closes faster with less paperwork. Sellers love cash because it feels like a sure thing. But that doesn't mean a financed buyer can't win. A well-prepared buyer with strong financials, a local lender, and clean terms can still write a competitive offer. It just takes more finesse and the right agent to guide that presentation. As for escalation addendums, these can be powerful tools if used properly. An escalation clause says, I'm offering $600,000, but I'll go up in $5,000 increments up to $630,000 if someone else outbids me. This gives the buyer a way to stay competitive without bidding blindly. But it does come with risks. You're revealing your max number to the listing agent, and you're putting your trust in them to represent a legitimate competing offer. If you're going to use an escalation clause, I recommend requiring written proof of the competing offer in the addendum and capping your escalation at a price you're truly comfortable with, because you might end up paying it. In short, the strongest offers are a combination of clarity, confidence, and strategy. A buyer doesn't always need to be the highest bidder, they just need to remove the seller's doubts. And Chuck, your role as an exclusive buyer's agent is exactly what makes that possible. Buyers who have you in their corner benefit from an offer strategy built not only on numbers but on tactics, which can be the difference between winning and watching from the sidelines.
Yeah, I totally agree. And frankly, this is also where experience comes in representing a buyer. By the way, let's look at inspections for a minute, because of the various inspections that a buyer can do, the home inspection is the key one. This involves a thorough inspection of the home, all the appliances, the electrical panel, the outlets, the hot water heater and water filtration system, and the inspector goes through the attic as well as the crawl space looking for any signs of problems. Any signs of moisture in the crawl space is a big red flag. Any creatures or pests in the crawl space or in the attic need to be dealt with. And the inspector examines the state of the roof. There are homes that definitely need a thorough inspection, but there are newer and really immaculate homes that have clearly been well maintained and are less of a risk should a buyer decide to waive the home inspection. What would you say about this when it comes to a buyer's strategy?
The home inspection is absolutely essential for most buyers, especially retirees, because it serves both as a safety net and as a way to better understand the property they're investing in. It gives buyers a much clearer picture of the condition of the home, including all its major systems. An experienced home inspector will look at the electrical panel, test outlets, examine plumbing, water heaters and filtration systems, and also inspect the attic and crawl space, two areas that often reveal issues not visible elsewhere. Moisture in the crawl space is always a red flag, not just because of mold and air quality concerns, but because it can indicate drainage problems or structural issues. Likewise, signs of pests, rodents, or water damage in the attic can point to roof leaks or inadequate ventilation. The inspector will also look at the condition and age of the roof, which is a major cost item and often overlooked by eager buyers. When it comes to strategy, most buyers, especially those relocating to a new town, should be cautious about waiving the home inspection. Older homes or homes that have been remodeled without permits should always be inspected thoroughly.
Yeah.
The same goes for homes on septic systems or private wells, where the risks and repair costs are often greater. However, in certain circumstances, such as newer homes that are still under warranty, or homes that have been impeccably maintained and come with documentation, a buyer might decide to waive the inspection contingency in order to make their offer more competitive.
Yeah.
Even then, I always recommend that the buyer go ahead and get the inspection for their own peace of mind, even if the offer isn't contingent on it. In markets like Sequim, where ideal homes are rare and sometimes receive multiple offers, waiving contingencies can make an offer stand out. But it's a calculated risk and should only be taken when the buyer understands the property well and has reason to feel confident in its condition. Retirees in particular should avoid rushing into that kind of decision because unexpected repair costs can be financially and emotionally draining at this stage of life. So while waiving a home inspection might help win the deal, it's rarely the right move unless the home truly warrants that kind of confidence. And even then, the inspection should be done anyway.
Now, Alden, I'm going to ask a self-serving question as an exclusive buyer's agent in the Sequim area. How important is it that a buyer have their own exclusive buyer's agent who doesn't list properties but specializes in working with buyers only?
That's not a self-serving question. It's a critical one. And frankly, one of the most important distinctions a buyer can understand in today's real estate landscape. Having a true exclusive buyer's agent, someone who works solely for the buyer and never represents sellers, is absolutely essential, especially in a market like Sequim, where inventory is tight, price variances are significant, and many retirees are relocating from out of the area without deep local knowledge. An exclusive buyer's agent brings a level of fiduciary clarity that's rarely found in traditional dual agency setups or in offices where agents are juggling both listings and buyers. When a buyer hires an agent who also lists homes, there's always a built-in conflict of interest, even if it's unintentional. That agent is part of a brokerage that benefits from listing inventory and may be under subtle pressure, financial or professional, to steer buyers toward in-house listings or preferred properties. An exclusive buyer's agent, on the other hand, has one job and one job only: to protect the buyer's interests. That means giving honest feedback about price, condition, location, resale potential, and negotiating leverage without worrying about offending a seller or undermining a listing agreement. It means the agent isn't chasing a double commission or trying to make the deal work for both sides. Instead, they're focused on helping the buyer make the right decision, even if that means walking away. In a market like Sequim, where homes at the top of the bell curve move fast and others sit for months, that guidance is invaluable. Retirees are often making what may be the last major real estate purchase of their lives. They don't need pressure, they need truth. They need someone who will scrutinize listings, interpret inspection reports, push back against inflated pricing, and negotiate fiercely on their behalf. That's what an exclusive buyer's agent does. And for buyers who value transparency, loyalty, and deep market insight, there's simply no better choice.
Well, I certainly can't disagree with that. I think it's good advice. You do raise a touchy issue that comes up periodically. In response to a good offer, a listing agent will tell me that the seller was offended and isn't going to respond with any kind of counteroffer. As you know, experienced negotiators would consider that a childish response on the part of the seller because they don't get to dictate the price and terms. They get to negotiate in a free enterprise system where buyers and sellers reach mutual acceptance through an opportunity to seek their best deal. I often like to talk about what the market is telling or what the market is saying to us when it comes to prices. Supply and demand determine prices, and a seller who refuses to negotiate at all and is offended has a gross misunderstanding of how this works.
You're absolutely right. And what you've described is one of the most frustrating and irrational behaviors we see
Yeah.
in real estate. When a seller says they're offended by an offer and refuses to respond or counter, they're reacting emotionally to what should be an objective process. This kind of mindset reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how real markets function. Sellers don't set value. They test the market and discover it. The only number that ultimately matters is the price a qualified buyer is willing to pay. Period. And while it's perfectly reasonable for a seller to reject an offer they think is too low, it's short-sighted and unprofessional to let ego block the possibility of negotiation. Every offer is an opportunity to start a conversation, and experienced negotiators know that even a wide gap can often be bridged if there's a willingness to engage. You're absolutely right to frame it as a matter of what the market is telling us. Supply and demand, not sentiment, set market value. If a home has been on the market for months without offers, or if several buyers are all coming in below asking, that's a signal. It doesn't mean buyers are trying to steal the home. It means the list price is misaligned with current market conditions. A rational seller, advised by a skilled agent, should welcome every offer as data, not take it as a personal insult. Ironically, the same sellers who get offended by a fair offer today are often the ones who later chase the market down with multiple price reductions, losing time, momentum, and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars in the process. That's why your approach as an exclusive buyer's agent is so important, Chuck. You're not just writing offers, you're interpreting market signals, analyzing pricing trends, and helping your clients make thoughtful, well-calculated moves. If a seller refuses to engage with a reasonable offer, that's not a reflection on your buyer. It's a red flag about how the seller views the negotiation process. And in those cases, your buyers are better off walking away than dealing with someone who mistakes a business transaction for a personal challenge.
Boy, that really nailed it, I'll tell you. I would add that listing agents play a major role in the background when it comes to a seller getting offended. You know, there were conversations between the seller and the listing agent for sure, right? And the listing agent should have educated the seller on this subject and helped them to understand they can make a counteroffer, even if it's just a small counter on the price. But my rule has always been, never let an offer die. A lot of listing agents are clearly not educating their sellers on this topic.
That's right, and it highlights a deeper issue in the industry, the lack of skilled, ethical guidance from many listing agents when emotions start to override logic. When a seller gets offended by a reasonable offer, it's rarely happening in a vacuum. Behind the scenes, the listing agent has either failed to properly set expectations from the beginning, or worse, is enabling that emotional reaction rather than redirecting it toward constructive negotiation. This is where real estate moves from a marketing exercise into professional representation, and unfortunately, a lot of listing agents fall short. An experienced and responsible listing agent should explain early on that offers are not personal judgments, they're part of a process. Even a low offer deserves a response.
Yeah.
The simple act of countering, even by $5,000, keeps the conversation alive and signals a willingness to negotiate in good faith. When a listing agent lets an offer die without any counter, they're not just failing their seller, they're potentially squandering a real opportunity and eroding trust in the negotiation process itself. And they're certainly not doing their duty to act as a buffer and advisor. Your principle, never let an offer die, is the mark of a skilled negotiator who understands that in real estate, momentum matters. Offers are living documents. They represent interest, and interest is the most valuable commodity in a slow or transitioning market. If an agent allows a seller to shut down a negotiation out of offense or pride without first reframing the situation, they've abdicated one of the most important parts of their role. Sellers don't always know how markets work, but their agent should.
Yeah.
And it's the agent's job to bring clarity, not heat, into the room. In truth, Chuck, many of these scenarios are where your exclusive buyer clients benefit the most. Because you know that when the other side is being poorly advised, it's not just frustrating, it's an opportunity. And buyers with patient, strategic representation often win because they stay in the game when others walk away.
Well, we've covered some very important topics on making offers, negotiating, contingencies, and critically important tips for buyers who are retiring to Sequim. These are things all buyers should know. But I can tell you, not all brokers are going to know how to educate and guide their buyers. And that statement comes from 4 decades of working with other brokers. Thank you again, Alden, for your knowledge and wisdom on these topics. I hope you'll join me again in a future broadcast.
Chuck, it's been a real pleasure. I appreciate the thoughtful questions and the opportunity to speak directly to retirees and buyers who are navigating one of the most important transitions of their lives. You've created a valuable platform by combining decades of legal and real estate experience with a true commitment to buyer advocacy. And I know your clients are better informed because of it. I'd be honored to join you again anytime. Until then, I hope our conversation helps consumers make decisions with clarity, confidence, and protection in mind.
Well, I'm absolutely convinced this will help buyers. And again, thank you so much, Ellen. And I look forward to talking with you again. Take care, my friend. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.